All right. So I will call the Capital Planning Committee to order Monday, October 5th, 7:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. I'll call the Capital Planning Committee to order Monday, October 5th, 7:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020. Streams in the background when you record it. Let me start that again. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Capital Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite our best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. I mentioned it briefly before everyone was on, but I do not expect Ms. Braccio tonight. Everyone else is present. We will move on to approval of meeting minutes from September 14th, 2020. Did anyone have any proposed edits for I think Joe had drafted the minutes for that meeting.
I've got some proposed changes. I don't know if it'd be more efficient if I send a red line out to the committee and we can approve it next meeting, or we can share my screen, whatever you think.
I guess I saw Andrew, were you shaking your head no? You didn't have any edits? You're on mute, but I see you shake. I see two head nods. No. So,
no, I don't have any edits. So.
So no for me. I'm not on mute, and I was following Andrew's lead. No.
And I had a few. Jeff, yours around the consistency of the motions.
It was that, and then I think it was also about which meetings we actually approved, or which minutes we actually approved at the meeting.
Okay. So my suggestion would be to do a red line to
Sure.
avoid, unless anyone wants Jeff to screen share now. The only other thing is, Joe, I know when you circulated them, I think I forgot to call on you for a motion to adjourn. Was that the case?
Yeah, I just add because I didn't know how to list that.
So I would just write not prompted for that would be my view.
Sure.
We've clearly had a majority to adjourn, and then I think you said I did not vote on one of the things.
Yes.
But it looked like the motion carried unanimously anyway, so I would just say no vote heard or something like that. I mean, I was in favor of it, but
sure.
If that's what the video says, then I can't, not going to dispute it.
Yep. And there was the one thing that I didn't get from the audio because I wasn't sure what Catherine said. So it's listed in the email I sent around. It was the minute 54 of the meeting.
So
I am sorry about that. I get criticized for that quite a bit. So when you guys look at the computer, I mean, my mic, I guess, is above the computer. I've got this little thing that pops up, and I guess I've got to look up more than I do, but I tend to look down, which I guess is my problem. So I will try to look up and not do that to you.
So
that was loud and clear.
So I thought it was what Mrs. Cook said was that she inquired of whether the financing of the last tranche had been accounted for in the 2021 budget. That's what the line was. I went back and Zapruder filmed that, and I figured it out.
Your lip reading skills are coming in handy.
That sounds like something I would say. So.
We definitely talked about that. We had a long conversation about that. So I think, Jeff, with that, if you've gone back and looked at the tape and want to bring your proposed edits,
sure.
We're going to be meeting here pretty soon, so we're well within our window to get those approved.
Sure.
So
I can do that right after this.
Okay. All right. Anything else in the minutes? All right. Chairman's update will be very quick. I participated in the item A is update on townhouse project proposal. So as you remember, there was an engineering report that's been shared with this committee, and subsequently, John Parent, the engineer, and myself attended a historical commission meeting a couple weeks ago to allow use of CPC funds. We actually need the historic commission to be in favor of the project because of the historic preservation item that falls as part of that funding. It's a very detailed presentation, and it was a little, we made the presentation and then we dropped off. They talked about a few other items and they actually went back to vote on it at the end. So none of us were actually present for the vote, the way they structured the meeting. The general gist is that they are tentatively in favor of it. And the main reason for tentative was they wanted a hand in choosing materials and or the contractors. I'm going to separate those two because they're two very distinct things. So, of course, the project needs to be approved by town meeting first, right? And the funding source would be identified there. What would then happen is the town would then pay for the actual drawings to be done, which would specify materials that could be used for each of the components. That is what I have termed to them as the area for collaboration, right? If there are specific materials that are in play versus not out of play. But once we get there, and once Mark, as the chief procurement officer, goes out to bid on the central register, it's a low bid situation. That Mass General Law governs that. So we have sent that back. I know Mr. Parent went back to them earlier this week saying, what's the status of the letter? Because I know we want to submit it to CPC, but that's the latest. Again, it wasn't met with opposition. I just think they want to collaborate. And I think we told them we're willing to collaborate. So it's just, I think, probably one more discussion and we'll hopefully get there. I thought my personal view is I had never worked or seen a work product of the engineer before. And I thought it was very, very well done, professionally done presentation. So if this does get to town meeting, et cetera, having that vendor come in, I think, will be very persuasive to what the town's trying to do with the townhouse. So any questions on any of that?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Is this the same vendor that did the library?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, they are good. I agree. So I guess, it's common sense, but I never realized that CPC won't consider an application for the use of the historic tranche of their money unless the Historic Commission weighs in and recommends it themselves. So that's great. So the letter is forthcoming, you think, where they say they do?
Yeah, I mean, they've had a public meeting where they've tentatively approved it. I just think we need to, if I were on the other side saying, what does tentative approval mean? I think we want some stronger language around that. So I think it's forthcoming. CPC has an application deadline of October 15th is what I understand. John Parent would love to have that letter to attach to the application because that would really kind of seal sort of the entire package.
So John's got the package ready to go except for the letter?
He does.
Okay. But obviously we don't have firm numbers because it's not gone out to bid. So what does he put in for request for funds?
What was in the engineering report, which will be the 2.2 million.
Okay.
And then CPC usually puts a contingency on that.
Okay.
Kathy, how long can you bond a building for?
30 years.
30 years, okay.
I don't know, Brian, if you want to talk about what you have projected in the capital plan for this using the 2.2 and what your logic was. I know it can change, but.
Yeah, no, I did a standard 20-year loan. We'd probably, this is a pretty major building renovation. We'd probably consider a 30, but we'll run the numbers and, let you know on that too.
Yep, so we're confident that with the CPA funds, we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt with the CPA balances as they are now and with the revenues coming in. So once you bond a CPA project, you can't revoke the CPA law while there's a bond committed by CPA. So they can't, in other words, they can't later on say, or the town can't later on in 5 years or 10 years say, no, we're revoking the CPA, so now the town's on the hook. You're committed to that, so.
So that's one way, that's one way to keep it in place, right?
Right,
Keep doing
right.
long-term projects.
Yeah, and we already had the library, right? That's 20 years, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
All right, so I guess stay tuned on that one. I'll let you know if any advocacy is required from this group, but the general concept of bundling the project, I think, was well received. It's just a matter of, are they using preservationist type materials, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the conversation about the windows being replacement or not went over fine.
Yeah.
So someone has called me, I don't remember who it is, I can't believe I remember who it is. Someone or emailed me or something. They wanted to know whether the windows that are taken out can be recycled. And so anyway,
I'll pass that along to John.
I think that was me, Kathy.
well, when you appeared, I thought, was that Andrew that asked that? Okay, so Andrew, there you go. Ask your question then.
The thought was to take the old windows, Jason, and maybe make them into a greenhouse, which we're thinking of doing with our old windows from our house.
I'm not gonna answer that question one way. I just go right to John with that question.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out.
No worries.
All right. South Union School. The appraiser was out at the property within the last week, and we expect to see appraisals within the next week and a half. He did also reach out to other town officials, like not beyond like the obvious of like having John Parent's team walk him through. But my understanding is he also did speak with the town planner, just understand what the limitations are of the site and everything like that for any hypothetical best use of the property. So again, everything was deemed a hypothetical because obviously no decisions have been made, but he does seem to know how to navigate town government and, understand the best, the possibilities that may exist for this. So I'm going to need to talk to Mr. Healy as chair of the BOS to see what he wants to do with those appraisals from there and what involvement he wants from this committee versus, is BOS going to take it from there and decide, or is it collaborative, et cetera. So I haven't had that conversation because I figured it'd be best to have the appraisals in hand before we deal with a hypothetical scenario.
But do we know whether his highest and best use is going to be condos? Has he said that much at this point?
I have not heard a definitive what the highest and best use is. He did comment on the housing in the elevator in my brief conversation with him, but the conversation was mainly to get him contacts of people he wanted to talk to.
So Jason, once the report is issued, you're expecting to turn it over to BOS for them to decide what to do with the building once they see the appraisal? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to them of strategy. How much of it is a regular session? How much is executive? How much legwork do they do before seeking the authorization of town meeting? You obviously have a bunch of different players in terms of historical, ShopC, recreation, youth and family that may, have other feedback they want to give. So just who's bringing it all together, I think is going to be the question to Marty.
I think that's the right question too, because there's more things to be answered before they say, let's put it up for sale.
So Kathy, you're
Yeah,
just,
but that's what they want to do. They may not want to do it.
yeah, just FYI, you're looking directly at the camera and your mic's still faded. I don't know if it's just me or not, but just.
No, I was looking down. No, I was looking down.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess anything else in South Union? All right, transfer station. So I think at the last meeting, Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you had suggested I come back with kind of a list that we could vote on how we were going to send it 10 different ways. Since then, Mr. Butler has done a presentation to BOS and he did it to advisory. Walking away from advisory, Mr. Butler kind of volunteered to do that himself of saying, I'm going to outline what the next steps are. I do know he sent an email today to BOS and in advisory, at least the chairs of each, indicating a strong desire to get that Board of Health thing moving in terms of licensing. So I guess unless this committee disagrees, my plan was just to monitor it. And if I felt like the progress was going sideways, bring it back here for us to re-engage. But I think we all agreed no one had an interest in it, but we wanted to make sure it kept moving down the right track now that we had resolved the the capital piece of it.
Yep, I think that's fine.
I think that's a
Anyway.
right track too. I think that CPC has done their job to decide whether to replace the hopper or not. Very clearly, very well done. And given that 3 people on this committee are on advisory, I'm not worried about it going sideways.
That's, yeah. So I was happy to cross something off the list, to be completely honest.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
I think it should be crossed off.
So then on ClearGov update, I got an email from Brian today that all the data has been uploaded. He's tied it out. We're going to talk hopefully tomorrow about making sure the dashboards all make sense and are consistent with what this committee has come to expect. Obviously, we can figure out what customizations involved, and then there would be some sort of training forthcoming for the group, just of how to use the data, how to review it. At a future meeting, we need to agree on what the form should look like for future submissions. So if a department head has a new capital item that they become aware of, how are they submitting it to us? So there's a standard format that they all have to do in terms of justification so that we can take the right action in meetings. Obviously, he or she will be invited to express it, but I think this will create a nice written trail of, what the 6 of us or any of the people that come after us are looking at to approve such a need, as opposed to just kind of theoretical on a piece of paper, why it's needed, et cetera. So
Can we set a policy, similar to maybe what we're going to do in advisory with, there should be no changes to what has been agreed to without CPC explicit approval?
yeah, that was, I think, always the intent. And I think that's what we've been doing since we were formed. But Mark, I don't know, can we make a policy, or is that something we need to send to BOS to make a policy? It's kind of a no-brainer, but it's just a matter of, what's the approval policy in town?
I would think that you probably would want to have that done by the selectmen. So, I mean, you could bring something to them and recommend them. I think they'd be probably pretty amenable to that.
Okay. And then I think we'll take it from there of what that should look like, but I don't see any objections to making a policy, right, on this discussion?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Karen, I see you waiting. I need like one more minute, then I'll bring you in. School Research Subcommittee standing update. So I'm going to have this on the agenda for each meeting. As you know, Kathy and I were appointed. We were supposed to start last Thursday, but due to an inconsistency in how BOS appointed myself and Kathy as compared to the school committee member, we are erring on the side of caution. BOS is going to reappoint appoint Katura Martin from the school committee tomorrow night, and we are kicking off on Thursday. So we'll have an update at our next meeting of what we discuss. They've already pulled all the enrollment data back to the last report, so the committee will have something to work with. They've been very quick in terms of getting data, so we'll have to figure out, Kathy, where we go with that. But my intent is that Kathy or I will update you, or in some combination every meeting moving forward on this topic until there's a presentation. All right, Karen, I'm going to bring you in for our next item, item 5, Quarterville Road project. Going to promote to panelist. While Karen gets set up and unmuted, etc. As you all know, this is on the FY22 plan for one of the DPW projects. I've talked a lot in various ways with Karen about the project. As you recall, it's a project, I'll let her outline the exact boundaries, but it's a project that's currently slotted about $2.5 million. It obviously would be bonded, but includes sidewalks, roadways, use of complete streets money, which the BOS just adopted a policy on. But it impacts also, I think, how we look at road maintenance moving forward in the right timing. And I thought it was best for this committee to hear what the project entails, understand what Karen's current line of thinking is in terms of whether this still is an FY22 item, and then help chart a path forward, whether it's, a full support for FY22 we need more information to support, or a deferral. We may or may not reach that decision tonight, but at least I wanted to lay the groundwork because A, it's a huge item, and B, I think Karen, and I don't want to speak for you, is struggling with what the right timing is based on COVID environment that we're in and how you properly vet a roadway project, coupled with other stuff that is going to be happening in terms of Mass Pike overpasses, et cetera. So I figured there'd be a lot of good thought process here provided as well. So Karen, I don't know if you want to give a broad overview of the project just to level set everyone, what your current line of thinking is, where you're at in the engineering process, and then maybe we'll take it from there as a committee.
So the Cornhill Road project, it actually all started way back, the thought process for it back when Legacy Farms was going in over in Hopkinton. The bulk of that whole housing was going to be traveling up to Route 9, and we assumed Cornhill is going to be the main road. So we started looking at that and how to make it safer for bikes and pedestrians, and that's how that started in. So the project actually goes from, it's technically River Street at the bottom. Cornhill Road 85 really turns into River Street just after Woodland Road. But it's all the way from the Southville intersection up to, it really goes up to the DPW yard, because at that point then you get to the overpass for Route 9, and then you have the causeway, which is difficult in and of itself. So again, the project's it's improving drainage, fixing the sidewalks and improving the sidewalks, adding a little bit of like a breakdown lane, not a full breakdown lane, but like a 4-foot shoulder, so that there is some sort of way to pull to the side, because if any of you travel that, you know that that's near impossible to pull to the side and still let traffic through. So on the docket right now for the town, we have a downtown project, which includes spurs. So it basically continues Main Street downtown. It spurs out onto Newton Street, and then it kind of takes a spur north on Marlborough Road from the existing TIP project Main Street that we're doing. Then it goes down Corderville, actually, from where the TIP project ends to the Northern Library entrance. And then there's the, and we put in the Deerfoot Flag intersection project into that. So it's all Chapter 90 money that's, or right now, and that's funded through that. So we've depleted our Chapter 90. We've got road maintenance money that we've been kind of honing in on or trying to keep, and that's actually kind of getting spent through this also, because, you know, as we go, prices keep going up. So Corderville is going to have to be funded through like the taxes, and also we'll be able to hopefully get complete streets money for it. That's the goal. We actually have a design 99, like it's done, it needs to be vetted, but because we have to have it voted at a town meeting, we really need to make sure that people buy into this project. We saw how Main Street could go. This isn't the same thing where we don't need easements or anything, but the Main Street project, you know, it was many years to get people to buy into that project. And we didn't even have to pay. We were getting $9 million in for that project. This, we're actually paying money out. So I do want to make sure we vet it well. I mean, we could put it to bid. I mean, next year there's projects going on. Hopefully we'll be able to do downtown, and then the Accelerate project for the Mass Pike is going to be happening. So it's probably, you know, there's a lot of work kind of going on, and Corderville's sort of in the middle of all that too. But waiting one more year makes sense to put it onto 2022 at the earliest. And that's, we would be able to vet it through next year, finish up all the plans, and then actually have town meeting vote it in 22. That's sort of that's sort of my aim right now. I'm open to changing that, but that's what the plan was.
Okay, can we talk about timing to make sure we're on the same page as far as a year goes? So right now, we're about to start working on the budget for 21, 22, correct? So next year is town meeting for that budget. So we're not talking about that year, we're talking about the following town meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, when we inherited the capital plan, it was up for FY '22. So i.e. coming up at this town meeting in 2021.
So we're pushing it a year, is what we're talking about.
That, if we go with what Karen's saying, yes, that's what we would be doing. But we haven't talked about it, which is why it stayed on the capital plan as an FY '22 item as of now until this committee votes differently.
So Karen, you think the non-tip Main Street will be done first? I don't know what you said about the Pike, whatever's going on there, so I'm not sure what that was. But you're trying to get those two things done first before you start on this one? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yeah, so I don't have any control over the one on the Pike. That's actually the Mass DOT is just doing it. They're gonna close down, they're doing one of those bridge replacements over a weekend. And then, so they'll do westbound and then they'll do eastbound over Corderville. And then they also have to do Woodland Road, and they're doing the one that crosses over at Parkerville also, the R3 crossings. And then there's one in Westboro they're doing. So it doesn't have anything to do with us as much as that we're just coordinating with them so that when we do our project, it folds into, like, they're putting sidewalks in under the bridge and stuff to fold into what we're doing. And meeting up with our engineering. That's the only reason that is relevant, I guess. I'm sorry, because I screw up with the FY versus the calendar year of the actual, town meeting. So FY '22, which is voted in '21, I do think that's too early at this point, because I would like to do downtown Main Street first. I think it just makes sense to kind of continue that at this point and really make, it kind of has holistically sort of formed itself into this. And I just think it takes that downtown and makes it a fairly robust, complete street area. Then now we just need to fix a main corridor in town, which doesn't have the same connectivity or like when you look at what's attached to Corderville, it's a super important road, but there's not a lot attached that people are trying to get to. And that in terms of like walkability and everything. So being able to walk Corderville is what's important. The spur streets will enter into it eventually, if that makes any sense to anyone.
So do you have to coordinate the Corderville project with the Mass DOT if they're going to put sidewalks underneath the bridges?
Yeah, well, because we wouldn't want their sidewalk to be like 10 feet off of where our sidewalk's gonna go, right? So we want to make sure the alignments are all matched up. So and they already have our plans of what we're planning on doing. And there's no reason that the plans would change right in that area.
So Karen, I guess taking fiscal years, taking town meeting dates off, because I don't think we know when all the right town meetings are going to line up here. What would be the earliest time that you'd be ready to kind of, I'll call it, break ground on this project using a calendar month and a calendar year?
So if we were able, and assuming, I mean, we could actually probably design over this winter and actually, bid next year if we had the money. I don't think we can collectively get the voting public involved that quickly. So I think we need one more year, and then, so it would be in the spring of 22, I think we would be able to bid something, or we could really bid in the winter, and we could go to a town meeting that might be in the spring with an actual amount, or, with contingencies associated. But I think we need a year to get buy-in and have people understand that this project is going on. I mean, I still have people who don't know about the downtown project and keep complaining about different things. And I'm like, geez, that's on the website too. And it's actually a lot more formatted out on the website than the Cornhill project is.
Okay, so to keep talking about the timeline, you're not going to be able to bid it in the spring of 22 if we're not going to have the town meeting until the spring of 22 for the project. So the first time you'd be able to bid it would be July 1st of 22.
Oh, bid it. No, you can bid
Bid.
contingent on the money. So you can bid a project and say a contingent on funding. And then if we don't get the funding, you don't award the project. So that is possible.
I misspoke. Okay, I get that piece of it. So if you're going to exhaust your Chapter 90 money with the non-tip Main Street project, which is what you said a few minutes ago,
Yep.
why wouldn't you then want to turn your attention to this project with the next batch of non-repair Chapter 90 money? Why can't we start building up another pot for the Cornhill Road project? Why do we need to use all tax money for it?
Well, partly because with Main Street, we haven't been keeping up as much as with our other paving, right? So we have that. We also, with the downtown, again, we're exhausting everything. And the Cornhill Road project it's an important project. It's such an important road in town. And we only get 450,000 a year, assuming that we're able to still get that same amount. So, we're talking 4 years to actually gather up that much money, at which time we're not being able to spend that money on other things. So and we're assuming that Complete Streets will get $400,000 from that for this project. And we do have we're still getting our town roadway maintenance money. But that money, again, we need to be using somewhere else. And with the Complete Streets policy, as we pave and as we look at things, we need to be also assessing whether or not these projects should have, we should always improve the sidewalks on almost every road we're on at this point that has sidewalks. But, we have to be looking at adding sidewalks or bike lanes or any kind of refuge. And that's, again, that eats the money really quickly, because anything for like a curbing automatically means that we need drainage. And anytime there's drainage, now you've got a whole nother design issue.
Okay, so no Chapter 90 money for this because you really needed to do the Penta road maintenance that you're not doing right now because of Main Street, as far as the next 4 years.
I guess,
What you said?
does anyone else have, I have a few comments about maybe how to proceed it, but I don't know if anyone else has questions that hasn't gotten a chance yet.
Is it 400,000 per project or 400,000 per year? Chapter 90
Per year.
per year.
So
Okay.
it's around 430 is what we get per year, assuming that they keep it funded at the same level.
Okay.
Aaron, what's the difference between it being a state road versus just any other town road? Is there any other funding available because it is a state road or something like that?
It's actually not a state road. It's our 85 is actually a town road. It's just a numbered road. So what we have for state roads is weird. Like Route 30 is actually our road, except once you get out past Sears Road, it's state. And once you get out past Central Street, it's state. But the middle piece is all ours. And they own a little piece of Southville Road, which is weird.
Okay.
Karen, is there any way to have this be a tip project if you were ready?
I at one point did do the project notification forms and stuff to make it a tip project, but based on the way the Main Street project went and how difficult that was to convince people townwide that it was a good project, we just dropped the idea that we would be able to pass it in reality. We didn't think, there's a lot
So,
of drainage, not drainage, a lot of wetlands. And the new tip profile, because of Complete Streets, is a sidewalk on each side of every road. And the wetlands wouldn't necessarily get us out of that. It wouldn't be able to, like, we wouldn't be able to get a waiver on that throughout that project. And so it would be a very difficult design. The houses are close to the road there. It would be problematic.
okay, so what would it take, like, if you weren't in a COVID environment? So what I'm hearing from you is you have this Mass Pike project you're thinking about, you have this Main Street project you're trying to wrap up, and you have the fact that you need to do public vetting of your Cornhill Road and education of it, right? I'd like to think that this group of 5, but even if Lisa was here 6, has a really good way of probably getting the word out, right? And have advocated for many projects in town before, right? With the right level, right? Like helping you do the due diligence, having Public Works Planning Board do the due diligence, because I guess where I'm at is, doesn't sound like you're ready for prime time, but I can't really understand why you're not ready for prime time if you're saying it's 99% ready. And I'm maybe too optimistic, but this sounds like a great shovel-ready project that we've talked a lot about as a committee. And maybe you don't have town meeting funding, and maybe we don't bring it to an annual town meeting because of X, Y, or Z reason. But at the very least, at least what I would like to see is that this project's ready to go, and that this team, coordinating with all the other powers that be in the finance team in the town, figure out the right time to financially fit this in and how to properly help you vet it, and get the right resident feedback so that it does get as much support as possible on town meeting floor. But I guess I don't want to use COVID as an excuse not to be ready to go with a project. And when I look at everything we have on our agenda, right, outside of maybe some of the fire items that are very specific grant opportunities, this one to me rises to the top of, hey, we could probably find some money somewhere in some program that we don't know that's coming. And we kind of know where Governor Baker is going with grant programs, right? There's a new program, I feel like, every week. I have no idea whether it's going to cover your project or not, but my personal view is we need to be ready to submit something if it comes out and we're not doing the residents the right service if we're not ready for that. And I'll be honest, right? We should get as much public feedback as possible to at least be ready for that. And then there's another level of education and feedback should the town have to foot the entire bill. So I guess that's where I'm at, and would welcome whether people agree with that, disagree with that from our committee, so then we can decide with Karen how we help her move forward.
Yeah, Jason, I think that's a good plan. Karen, is there any portion of that has to do with culverts or drainage or anything like that, or is it just the roadway?
No, there's drainage,
Okay.
a decent amount of it.
Okay, I've seen some of the MVP action grants for drainage, especially if it's along wetlands. So that might be another place to look for some funds. Now that we can.
But it's not just roadway and drainage, it's sidewalks too, on one side.
Correct, and
So-
a shoulder.
So to basically parrot what Jason just said, remember we're not out of this pandemic. We are not out of this recession. If the Democrats were to win the election, they're probably going to go for big infrastructure projects right away, to try to pump some money into the economy. So I totally agree. Let's get this thing ready to go. And then we'll decide how to finance it, but get it ready to go in case something falls in your lap and you've got to have it ready to submit right away to get the money from the federal government, not just the state government.
Aaron, can you just clarify, when is the state going to start the Mass Pike bridges?
So it's next year. They have certain weekends set aside. They skip Mother's Day weekend. Evidently, that's a busy Pike weekend. But I think they need to do Woodland Road first, and then they're going to do Cornhill. I don't have their exact timelines yet because it was like a design build, so we don't have the full design yet of what the Pike is doing. So so once we have that, we'll know
May of 21, though, it sounds like is the.
Yeah.
And there's no way we wouldn't be able to start regardless on 85 before the bridges? There's no way.
No, I honestly, we could, we could do work. We would probably just sort of gap out the bridges, and work on either side of it or work towards it and then just stop until they did their piece.
Okay.
Because they will have, the other bridges not so much, but Cornhill, they actually have to do the substructure. The other two bridges, they're really only doing the decks. But Cornhill, they're doing the substructure. If you guys live near
We
it,
drove
you've
under it today,
done
and
that
I made
forever.
thinking about. But Karen, you're the paving expert here. But right, asphalt plants are closing down soon, right? And
Yes.
even if a pot of money showed up tomorrow, right? Let's say we're having town meeting tomorrow, and town meeting approved it. And there's no grants, no nothing. By the time they open back up in May, right, and you get on the list and cycle through it, those bridges may be done before a paving company is actually even able to come pave. I know there's a ton of prep work and all of that, but just even to get that first coat down, right, is you're looking
Yeah,
at
I mean-
June of next year.
But what money are you using in May of 21?
I'm just saying even a grant opportunity, because what Jeff's question was the timing of the Mass Pike bridges. And what Karen seems to be implying, right, is it'd be nice to get the bridges done before we start dealing with Cornhill. So, but even if you had the money today, Kathy, is what I'm saying, like hypothetical, doesn't sound like we'd actually be able to get a paving company in there until May or June of next year to even do anything, just based on we're in New England.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So,
But we can definitely, if that's, I mean, I think it's a great plan we can kind of hone in a little bit more, have some public meetings. One of the things with plans is people don't understand them. A lot of times you have to walk them through it, but I've been meeting with people anyway. It's not like people can't call and come and ask questions. It's just that when they do that, those answers, like when you're in a bigger meeting and you're pointing things out, everyone else sees the same answers. But I still think I do think it's doable even in this, to do kind of like a general meetings and then say, come and ask your questions, and then maybe we can just post what questions were asked or something somewhere else. Again, it's worrisome not to have public input or feedback, because a lot of times that comes back and it haunts you, and you thought everyone in the world knew about the project, and all of a sudden it's like, no, we didn't, or they probably did, but they didn't really pay attention, is a lot of times the problem, especially public work stuff.
So Karen, in that vision, would you post your own meeting? Like you just set up a Zoom with Tom and you as the DPW superintendent host it? Would you want a committee to host you? Like, are you thinking Public Works Planning Board? Or are you thinking you're going to go to a BOS meeting and make a presentation just because how much public comment they get? Like, what are you thinking, or do you need feedback on that?
What we normally do is I usually vet initially through the Public Works Planning Board, because that's residents who you could sit there and do one topic for the whole night. So that's how we usually talk about things. Residents can come in and weigh in when it's normally public, right? But then because we're looking for money out of an article, I usually then have to go, or actually even if it's chapter 90, I have to go to the selectmen and say, all right, here's a project, which everybody knows about the project a little bit. Anyway, it's not like we keep anything a secret. But then we'd go to the selectmen's meeting and, this is what we vetted through. And then of course, more people will have comments. And then at that point, we try to put one cohesive thing together, have one final, probably just a meeting that would be a public meeting. So it wouldn't even necessarily be with the selectmen as much as a meeting about that it's just sometimes we just do it at DPW is having a meeting, and then iron everything else out, make sure everything's set, and then we can do a final to the selectmen.
I'm having trouble seeing how this is going to come together without money involved. Because, one of the first things the public is going to say was how much it's going to cost and who's going to pay for it, and that may determine their answer. We're trying to get a plan put in place that could be submitted if money became available quickly and we needed to act quickly. So I'm not sure how this happens. Is a road committee that Marty Healy was chair of, has that been disbanded completely at this point?
The Main Street Committee?
Is it gone?
Yes, because that was specific for Main Street to vet the plan, because we hadn't vetted it at the level that people felt it needed to be vetted. People knew it. We had been to several planning board meetings, several selectmen meetings, but a couple public meetings, but people didn't really come. So it was good. It was a good little group to fire through it and really kind of advocate for it.
So is Mr. Purple still here? Yes, he is.
He is.
Okay, so if we had a set of plans to do this work, and there was the ability to get federal and or state money to pay for 100% of it, but you had to act quickly. You had to submit it within whatever, a month, 2 months. What kind of town approval do we have to actually do that?
If we're bonding the project, well,
No, we're not paying for it.
Just
No,
the
I-
engineering, 'cause
So just best of our worlds, we're going to get 100% of it from the federal government.
I
don't
still,
know
I
that you
still
need
think,
any.
I don't, well, I don't know. I don't know whether there would be some town meeting approval required regardless of the funding. I don't know, Kathy. That's.
hang on.
not a
What
bad
am I
question.
missing here? Karen started the meeting and said we're 99% there with a plan. So what are we paying for? Are we saying the plans would need to be redone? Like, how did you pay for that 99% already, Karen?
So we've been using Chapter 90 for design. We have some more design we need to do a little bit, and then we have to do permitting with Concom and stuff for some stuff. So that's the pieces that aren't done, are that final, the Concom permitting and whether or not we have to do any kind of other larger permit, like a DEP type thing.
And do you
But-
have Chapter 90 for that or no?
I have to go back to selectmen and ask for some more to be allocated towards it. But I don't have the newest, because we've been focusing on the downtown. I don't have the newest quote from them from the design. But again, I'm not sure. A lot of times when the shovel ready, they want you to be able to bid it within. They think they want you to be shovel ready, like start, but we haven't bid it yet either. So that I don't know how that works with a lot of their projects, but yeah, I'd love to have a bid set ready in case that ever did happen ASAP. But that's one of the problems. If we have a bid set ready because we're thinking we might be able to find that kind of money. Okay, now we have this bid set that we just paid for. Oh, but now we didn't get any money. Now we're gonna vet it. And now all of a sudden some things change because people are like, no, I don't like that. Or, I don't know that much can change. We didn't have much comment on the first run through with people. People seemed okay with what we had, but we didn't have a big showing either.
I don't think it's been focused on very much. So Jason, what you said is not quite what I'm trying to say, which is if you've got a project that's fully funded outside the town tax base, grants, state, federal, whatever, what approval do we have to have from the town at large to do that project?
I'll go to Mark.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go back to saying I'd have to look at that to see what we'd have to do, assuming the funding's in place and everything. I'm still not sure on that. I'm still not sure whether we'd need to do anything with town meeting or not.
But it sounds like a bare minimum, you'd have to go to conservation is what Karen is saying, based on where this project lies. But that's obviously a hearing, not town meeting.
In selectmen, because they're gonna need to approve the bid.
Right.
Karen, a little bit more complex of a question. So I'm looking at the capital plan. Obviously, the Cornhill Road is this big figure there. But in the out years, we don't have a whole lot of other money besides the regular maintenance. I mean, do we have a 10-year road kind of capital plan in terms of, adding sidewalks, doing some of the streets over? I mean, this is just, 1.3, 1.5 miles worth of roadway in this town for $2.5 million. What else is coming down the pipe? Is there another 10, 15, 20, $25 million in the next 5 years? I mean, I just don't see those other, besides this one road. Are we good
So-
with the Chapter 90 funds and the other stuff, or is this just one big slug?
So it's a bit of a mix. So, the Complete Streets projects, the first fund, the first money that we've asked for, which is what you do with the first piece of money, is you get a prioritization plan. And that's going to dictate. So I haven't looked out past Corderville only because once Complete Streets started coming into the scene, that tells you where they basically, then the town comes up with a plan of, hey, these are our priorities for more of a reconstruction of a street rather than just a street maintenance. So road maintenance still just is its own thing, but and when we're on a street, if we want to suddenly say, okay, we want, because I do have a couple petitions for sidewalks on roads, and how that falls into Complete Streets would be, that's going to give us our plan in the future. It's not something specifically that the DPW has developed. We'd done Main Street. We come up with a certain amount of plans or project ideas, but now with Complete Streets, that's vetted through a different system now, or it's going to be developed through. So that will be where we'll start, unfortunately, plugging in money.
Okay, but I think that kind of makes sense. But I mean, this is an existing road, so isn't it more maintenance than it is a brand new street, or is it that we're changing the structure of it so much that it's really something different?
It's more of a reconstruction. So road maintenance, if there's a sidewalk, replace the sidewalk or fix the sidewalk, and repave or reclaim. But once we start either adding sidewalk or adding drainage, and it becomes a bigger project, that's when, especially because what we're trying to do is we're getting that shoulder in. So the road is going to be wider.
Okay.
That's where you end. It's more of a project versus just a maintenance that we don't even have engineering for. We just do those projects ourselves.
Okay. Yeah. So Jason, my thought on this is, I completely agree with you. Let's make this shovel ready. If we need to get a bid or do whatever we need to do, that hopefully there's a grant somewhere where we can pay for this. But I think in absence of a multi-year plan, like the Complete Streets plan with multiple roadways, adding sidewalks, as soon as we go to the town, they're going to say, well, what happened to that sidewalk committee? I was supposed to get a sidewalk, or, why aren't we spending money on that? It's going to just derail the whole thing. So until you kind of have that multi-year plan where, okay, Cornhill's the first thing, and then we're doing this, and then we're doing that, and we have a $20, $30 million plan over 10, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, I think it's going to get derailed pretty as an actual warrant article.
I don't have, and I think we'd have to think about how we're doing maintenance going forward too, right? Like you're referring to potentially new sidewalks, right? Or new or a different reconstruction, right? Like Corderville is, but we also are carrying $500,000 to $600,000 a year for just maintenance of what's already there, right? Which we all know, right? I'm sure we all would love our roads repaved, even if they were repaved last year, right? So that's got to be a constant battle, Karen. I imagine that you deal with on a regular basis as well.
I think we're going a little bit too far with this. I don't think we should mix up the maintenance, which is what we fund every year, the $325 that the town puts in from its tax base, added to her $425. That's your maintenance. Chapter 9, what we're talking about here is I think this is a true capital project, which is what we should focus on. But I am really interested into the question I've asked, which is because remember, when we had the last big recession, that's exactly what Obama did when he was first elected. They came up with all of this money for shovel-ready projects. It was the first thing they did. And so this could absolutely happen again in January. So I think that our focus should be on getting the project ready, whatever that means. And I'm not sure exactly what you got to do to get it to 100%. But we should at least find out what the process is then if you are going to apply for federal money, as far as what approval has to be had with the town. And I don't know the answer to it.
All right, so Kathy, that's a good question. I think, Mark, you heard the question loud and clear. So at our next meeting, hopefully we can have a response to that or clarification on that. Karen, what I think I would ask you to do, hearing the consensus of the committee, is to kind of outline your next steps, right? And maybe it doesn't have to be a formal memo, just even a step plan or work plan of what you're thinking and who you need help from, right? Whether it's you're going to do Public Works Planning Board, whether this crew can help you at any point, because I think we would have a vote of recommendation before it even goes to BOS and advisory of what's the right timing, et cetera. Hopefully we don't have to get to that, right? And hopefully the answer Mark comes back to is, as long as the town isn't funding it, there is not, but we all know there's matches on all this stuff too, which is inevitably, I think, going to bring us back to town meeting.
Yep.
Just hopefully not for 2.5 million.
Hopefully not.
Jason, I was just gonna say, my understanding is, yeah, as long as there's not a match, it's not so much at the town meeting level, it's at the board and committee level. You don't have to worry about town meeting. It's a grant like any other grant, so.
But this is a big grant, Brian. I can't imagine the BOS is going to want to approve a project this big without some kind of town input. So, and I don't know what that means. A special town meeting, I don't know what it means.
It could be, but it might be, that would probably be optional. I've never seen it required. It could be optional. But that still might mean they want to do that, yeah.
Brian, what's the usual grant? 5%, 10% match?
It really depends.
Every program is
Some are 50-50, some are less than that. They're usually not more than that, but some are less than that. It really depends. They're kind of unique.
I mean, I would support an article to have a grant matching bucket of money for the firefighter, SCBA, for whatever. Set aside, a couple hundred K for that. I don't know if it's possible.
So we're getting outside our bailiwick here a little bit. We're going to talk about grants and advisory. It's a hot topic.
So Mark, I think you understand your homework. Karen, you understand your homework?
Yes.
I guess, is there anyone else that wants to chip in on this topic before we move on?
I would only add one thing, which I'm actually concerned that we may not have enough projects and just having one isn't enough.
I think we can solve that, Joe.
Or at least in the sense with this project, maybe having it in two separate forms. One a more limited form where we're doing a street and bare minimum, and one Cadillac form where we're anticipating a lot of money.
So you think, Joe, that if there would be a big infrastructure bill passed early next year, that we might not have enough ready to be submitted?
I put it this way. Where we are capital wise, I would be concerned that that's the case, because if they're going to start giving it away, we should try and load as much as possible.
Yeah.
I can find more projects.
But I think Karen, to close it out, I mean, Andrew's comment, obviously, I know you have your 2 weeks off getting a complete streets policy, but I think as you're ready with other projects, right? It sounds like Corderville Road is your number one, but as you identify and as you have consultants assisting you, I think this committee expects to be updated of, hey, XYZ street, this is the next one in line. This is the plan. I'm not talking about something needs to be repaved. I'm talking about a major capital project, as Kathy has termed them. I think
we have some intersections that really need improvements, and those are expensive. So yeah, no, I trust me, I can think of a bunch of things. I just we're limited on even the engineering money that we have current to spend. So some of that can sometimes stop us a little
that
bit.
goes to Joe's point. If there's anything we can do to help you be ready for some of these things, even if we don't actually fund them for 5 years, and we're ready for certain things that come along the way that none of us have a crystal ball to anticipate. I think that's where we're willing to step up and help and sponsor, buckets of money that can maybe be used on an ad hoc basis under someone's direction.
Yeah, because we could definitely use chapter 90 for a lot of design work. It's just, I don't like to use it if we want to use it for maintenance, but if we are looking at going more deep into capital, and getting some stuff shovel ready and just having them started, that's a great idea. I can look into that.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, anything else for Karen? All right, thank you, Karen.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, we're gonna move on to item 6, which is the vehicle listing. So this was an item I had carried on open items from a prior meeting or two. I went to each of the department heads and got kind of their, I'll call it vehicle details. And anyone that looked at the file in the share drive, rough is probably overstating the current format of it. So before I spent any time with it, to be honest, I didn't want to form a view of what should or shouldn't be in there, but I just want to get a general sense from the committee of, what we're looking for further from these department heads to be able to recommend vehicles. I mean, we got a small test case with the pumper last year on fire. Karen clearly has a lot of items forthcoming on the DPW list. Police will always have a vehicle or two every year, at least if you follow their capital plan. So not sure any initial thoughts or where we want to go with this in terms of coming up with planning. And Andrew, this obviously leads into your topic of leasing that you've brought up in other meetings. And then we also have to think about, obviously, the bond rates the town is getting on some of these some of these things now. And given where the Fed has gone, at least for the next 2 years, do we have enough of a crystal ball to think about at least our next couple of years of how we, attack some of these capital needs? Do we kind of do status quo in terms of approach? Do we need more data? So that's my way of opening the conversation. Not sure where anyone wants to go with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
Jason.
can, sorry.
Go ahead.
Andrew.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Go, Jeff.
Any way we can get some more information on any outstanding balances that we owe on these vehicles? It's just an inventory, but it's not clear.
I think if you actually look at the capital plan, anything that has an outstanding balance would be carried
Okay.
year over year.
Okay.
It's likely just the fire items. I don't, Brian, that's my initial reaction. I
Nope,
think
you're
everything else
correct.
is usually
You're correct.
appropriated in the year of.
Okay, so we can just line it up with that.
Yeah.
So Brian, we don't do bond issuances for really vehicles besides fire trucks.
That's correct. Yes.
And is there a general reason for doing that versus just the headache of doing because it's so small, or just we don't buy enough in 1 year to package it? Or
Yeah, if it was packaged, it might be worth it. Once you get into the 6-digit area, 150, 200 grand, it's probably worth it. But things lower than that, it's usually been, at least the policy since I've been here, usually been that it's just better to appropriate it and be done with it.
okay, would that be where maybe leasing could have a place, having a pool
Yeah,
of money there?
It absolutely could.
Just thought.
I don't know if the delta is big enough, but yeah, I mean, it could be.
Okay. And Jason, the only other part on here is the vehicle data is great, but then eventually like having a trend of this. So every year getting a copy or having some history so that we could say, we know what the mileage is now, but what is it? How many are they putting on a year, or how many hours are they using a year? So we can forecast it out a little bit.
Yeah, and mileage, I think, just for those that aren't truck experts, especially on the fire and DPW side, the mileage on those are actually pretty low, and they always will be low. If you think about how far does a fire truck really travel, the only time it probably leaves town is for maintenance or mutual aid, and it's not usually going that far. It's really the engine hours and the idling. And I'm not a vehicle expert by any means to know what that idling does. But I think obviously a fire engine at a scene with a high idle running the pump is a lot different than, a police car idling outside your house sort of thing, right? So I'm not sure how to fully assess that. as we move forward. But I think that's obviously some of the questions that come up with each of these department heads or chiefs as they bring forward their capital items each year. Kathy, do you have something?
Not really coherent. So I would suggest that you keep this on the agenda and maybe we pick it up again. Not even next time, but the time after that. I've got a bunch of stuff that I've done over the years of advisory as far as vehicles and mileage and stuff. I just haven't had a chance to pull it together. So I don't have a lot of coherent thought right now as far as what we should do as far as setting policies on the smaller stuff. You know, we want the police cars to have 100,000 miles and so I'm just not ready to contribute a whole lot right now. So I'm just going to listen to this one.
Okay. No, I'm totally fine leaving this on. It had been hanging out there for a while. I guess what I would say is, and this will go into kind of as we talk about our meeting planning, if people need data around the vehicles that are being replaced or proposed to be replaced for FY22, like I need those requests sooner rather than later to make sure the department heads have adequate, time to reply to that and or are invited to our meetings. And then what I would also say is, given the bonding versus leasing conversation, and I'll call it the higher threshold we've always had for bonding of vehicles, given where we're at interest rate wise, I do think we need to not just look 1 year out. I think we need to look a couple years out and figure out whether there is, if there is a time to kind of combine some of these things. And maybe, I know most department heads usually try to bring forward one thing so they don't feel like they're monopolizing capital needs, but we do have some things that aren't spaced out the right way. And I think one of the things, like, for example, I want to at least have a discussion with the committee at a future meeting is, Chief Achilles had moved out his ambulance 1 year, but it's on its last leg. The only reason he moved it out was because of where the trend was in the ambulance fund, which can easily be resolved with bonding and spreading that over a couple year time period. So just thinking through things like that, are these department heads doing what they think is the right thing for the benefit of the broader good in the town? And can we piece it together a different way to achieve a better result? That I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I think it's worthy of a conversation of not just looking kind of in a 1 year, but maybe 2 to 3 years out as well in a future discussion, just to make sure we're thinking about it the right way and we're phasing these things the right way.
Well, I think what part of the problem that we're dealing with right now is we're caught in a short-term loop in terms of our decision-making process and how we're organizing things. And I would actually say that it'd be probably wise to look at this to revisit this not in a 2 to 3 year window, but in a 10 and 20 year window. Because if we're going to bond things out, a lot of these things last a lot longer than that window. And we can group lots of different types of vehicles together, knowing their rejuvenation cycle is going to be needed. And so we can cost average this stuff over, a decade and really have better financial management of the changeovers. And then we will avoid a lot of the cash crunches, like when an ambulance comes up and fire trucks and things like that.
Yeah, I think, well, at least the capital plan goes 10 years out right now with all of it.
I agree. So we need a good 10-year capital plan that we keep refreshing every year.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a war story, and it's really it's a little bit in the weeds, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there. So last year, I believe the building inspector gets a car. So there's certain people in town that are by contract allowed to have cars that the town pays for, that can take home at night, and he or she is one of them. And her car last year, I think the brakes went out. If Mark's still here, he'll know. The brakes went out. So there was an emergency request for a car, but it was done before anybody could really weigh in. It just got taken care of. And so that's a case where I think there might have been other choices that were made. I don't know for sure, but that I still think should be part of the plan too, is having a policy in place when a vehicle needs to be replaced in the middle of the year, an emergency. What do you do? What do you look at? What approvals do you get? Advisory ended up having to do an emergency or a reserve fund transfer, but we didn't like it because we got told about it after the fact. So I would like to see that be part of the process too. That's why I'm saying I'm not ready tonight to really hone in on this, because I think there's a lot of details to put in this piece of it.
Okay. So what I would ask is, so Kathy, obviously you have a lot you want to pull together. If anyone else has any other data points they want, let's bring that to at least the data points to a future meeting. And then maybe we'll select someone. We should decide whether longer term we want to create a liaison type structure by department or a liaison type structure by category, right? We're not going to talk about that tonight, but I think that's where I'm kind of headed with this, right? Is do we have a vehicle expert as a member of the committee? Or do we have someone that focuses, like, for example, I'll use myself, someone that really knows a lot about fire equipment, right? And can ask those questions, but maybe someone that knows a lot about DPW equipment and is a liaison to Karen that could think through not only the DPW equipment, but the road projects and all of that. So it's just something, obviously that's how advisory has organized itself for as long as I'm aware of, and Kathy can probably speak even longer than that. But I just think that's kind of where I want to go with topics like this, because I think that's how we'll kind of do homework and have kind of what I'll call presentations back to the group on a longer term basis to achieve a lot of the stuff that Joe mentioned. So give that some thought too in between. I know, Andrew, you had voiced in the last meeting a desire to look at recreation sort of thing. So we'll bring that to kind of the next meeting and discuss who wants to go where. Anything else on vehicles? All right, I'm skipping 7 because Lisa was not able to attend tonight. And I'm also skipping 8 because she was going to bring as an action item from the last meeting, next steps on public input. She was going to come up with a flyer of some sort. So that brings us to 9, which was the owner's project manager RFQ. Mark was able to dig up a few for on-call services. Typically, at least what I saw with the building committee, we didn't necessarily review as a committee and approve the RFQ that goes out. You know, I view that as more Mark as the chief procurement officer, but I also didn't want to take that liberty on our own. We obviously would review any submissions and could choose to do nothing with it or choose to do something with it. So I guess Mark has one draft. I'm waiting on one other town to reply that we know have on-call, on-demand type services like that. So I just wanted to get a consensus of where the committee thinks we should go with this. I know we had varying views at the last discussion, but nothing was really crystallized enough for me to provide further direction.
I think my thought was that we were all on board with doing an RFQ and getting some people in there to kind of have a short list.
Okay. Does anyone want to approve the RFQ before it goes out, or do we want Mark to work on that from a chief procurement and obviously liaise with anyone offline if he just has any questions or anything like that?
I'm
I
fine
would
with
prefer
it.
the latter. Let Mark take charge. He can liaise if he needs to.
Okay. All right. Everyone good on that?
Yep.
All right. Actually, the toughest item of the night is item 10 in meeting schedule. So I know this one. So here's what we need to do. The Board of Selectmen are going to be ready to hear from us. And Kathy, you want to think about how advisory wants to deal with this. But this will be the first year the Capital Committee will go in front of Board of Selectmen and advisory with a formal presentation, including our votes on everything that's going to go before annual town meeting in hopefully March of 2021. They will be ready for us likely late October or sometime early November for that presentation. The goal is to solidify capital before both BOS and advisory start to go through the nitty-gritty details of the operational budgets. So they kind of have, I'll call it, as solid of a number as you're going to get, absent massive changes in financial condition, et cetera. Mr. Healy is going to survey the board tomorrow. He was originally thinking they were going to do it in a regular meeting. Given what their agendas have looked like, it's looking more like a special meeting dedicated to capital, which I candidly have been advocating for, just because I think it's not going to be a short presentation. You're going to have input from department heads, and naturally your 5 members are going to have 5 different sets of questions. So we need to be ready for that, which to me entails a final vetting of our list, discussion of acceleration or deferral of items. That will likely include, someone's going to have questions for department heads, so we're going to have to let the department heads come back. And then I would like a vote on the presentation that would be made before it actually gets made, just in full disclosure. So what I was thinking, so that's what we have to achieve probably in the next month, but it's really the only thing we have to achieve. And given that we've had a lot of discussions on the items, I'm hoping to narrow a list of items that we need to truly, really rehash and revet. Looking at calendars and also trying to get us off the same week as BOS and advisory to the extent we can, just because it throws out throws out Tuesday and Wednesday nights of those weeks. And also realizing that at least some of us have school-age children, and the mornings are a lot different than they were, with staggered drop-offs and one kid on remote, one kid not on remote, and this and that. I don't know whether the morning times work anymore for anyone. For me personally, there are certain days that work, certain days that don't. So I guess let's figure out when we can meet first, like whether nights are better, whether mornings are better, what days of the week, and then chart like a plan for the next few weeks based on that. Does that make sense? So Andrew, why don't you go first, and I'll just go around the horn. Like what
Yes,
works and doesn't work.
Do we want to put a line in the sand for the selectmen meeting and work our way back? So like the last week of October for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm thinking we need one meeting to formalize our votes and one meeting to review a presentation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking reviewing of a presentation should hopefully be easy if there's consensus on the committee around items. Because we won't be making the presentation in a meeting, right? I think it would be incumbent on me to bring a presentation, send it ahead of time, and the committee offer comments and edits live.
Yeah, so, but when do we think that selectmen's meeting would be? Last week of October, probably?
I don't want to guess, but they're Mark, their next regularly scheduled meeting is the 20th. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'm sure they'd be open to feedback from us. So if we're not going to be ready till the week of the 26th.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, somewhere in that week. And then we can meet. We have one on the 19th, right?
As of now, but I'm open to changing that.
Okay. And we
So
can
is,
meet
what
next-
days are there any days of the week that are off limits for you, Andrew? Either day or evening?
next Monday. Other than that, I'm good.
That's a holiday, so we can't have it anyways.
That's
All right. Kathy, what's your preference?
I actually am flexible, so let's just see what everybody else can do. You know, I'm sure I can make it work.
Okay, Jeff?
I used to be a morning meeting person, but to your point, it's getting a little more difficult in the morning with school and everyone back into kind of routine. So I think evenings for me, probably anytime after 7:30.
Okay, and Joe?
I'd agree with Jeffrey, unless we're going to move the morning meetings earlier.
I would have trouble with that. I'm not that flexible. So Jason, don't we have a meeting on the 13th?
I threw it out there, but I didn't get I didn't get a broad group of replies. I got replies from like 2 people. So so what I would propose, hearing this, is I do think we should meet next Tuesday, the 13th at 7:30 p.m. The goal there would be to take as many votes as possible in the FY22 items. Then what we could do, day of the week matter to anyone once we get beyond, I think we were landing on evening based on what I'm hearing.
just not Wednesday because we have advisory.
Yeah, so then what I would think about doing is Monday, the 19th or Monday, the 26th to review a presentation.
I can't do it Monday, the 19th. That's one day I can't do it. I could do 26th. Yes, I can do 26th.
What about the 20th?
I can do 20th.
That will be a BOS meeting that night, so we wouldn't have Mark or maybe Brian. which I think
But
is
if we're just,
important.
but Jason, if we're just putting the president, I like the idea of the two meetings coming pretty close together.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we need Mark O'Brien to approve the actual presentation. They're gonna already know what's on the list from the 13th. They can give us their input before the 20th as far as.
I have a slight childcare issue with
What about
that.
the 22nd?
20th? On the 20th,
Well,
okay.
If it's better if we don't conflict with the BOS meetings.
Why don't we do the 22nd?
Sorry.
It's easier. You heard the product of that one time in one of the meetings.
I get it. Okay, so what'd you say, Andrew? 22nd?
22nd?
22nd.
Will that give us enough time to get the presentation done if we meet following week?
Yeah, that's 10 days, approximately, calendar days.
No, I mean, so if we have our last meeting on the 22nd and we're meeting the week of the 26th, we
Yeah.
basically have depending on which day it is, 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah.
Enough.
Okay, so again, BOS we think is going to meet on which days?
20th.
Don't know. Well, we know they're meeting on the 20th.
Okay, so we
We've
won't
been
be ready
ruled
on
out.
the
We've been ruled out of that agenda.
All right,
we're
so
not gonna be-
The 3rd is the earliest we could do this. which would
Kathy, it's going to be, it's likely a special meeting, so I don't know that it's going to be on a Tuesday. I can't commit to that until they decide tomorrow night. So I think what I will tell Mr. Healy is we will be ready after the night of the 22nd. So we will meet at 7:30 PM on the 13th, and we will meet at 7:30 PM on the 22nd. And then I'll have them propose a date, and we will post a meeting with them at some time after that.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so now before we adjourn, what I need to understand is whether for our meeting next Tuesday, were there any department heads you want here? And I would say in fairness to them, if you plan to vote no on something that they've put forward, and you all have the list, the list hasn't changed since the last meeting. If you plan to vote no or need more information to make an educated decision, in fairness, we should have them here to the extent they're available.
Can you give us to end of day tomorrow to reply for sure? Yes or no?
Yes, and I will circulate the list so we're on the same page of what would be before us. I can tell you already, just my own view is I'm planning to invite Council on Aging for a discussion on Corderville Hall, given the uncertainty of where we're going with Woodward, to have a discussion around that. And I'm planning to invite the fire chief to speak. He's got a lot of items, but also to speak to the ambulance item that I brought up not too long ago. I want to understand from him where he's at on the right timing for that. That's not actually on the list, but should it be on the list is, I guess, the question I want this group to make a decision on. And then that would be, and that's at least where I was going. So, but yes, you have till end of tomorrow, I think is totally fine to let me know. I will let any department head know that we'll be discussing it, just as a heads up, because I think that's just good governance. But obviously, to the extent there's an objection, I'd always like to have them come into the room knowing that they're going to be on the spot.
I mean, the big one's Corderville. So Corderville Road is not, so that's pushed off to 2022 town meeting.
At least.
Okay, so if that's gone, I mean, there's some DPW stuff. We already kind of had the hook lift truck. I don't think.
Yeah, we already voted on that. So unless someone's changed their mind.
Yeah, the only other,
And school's 100% of it. That's.
Yeah, so there are two NERI items. They have not officially voted yet, but they've pulled back their funding application from MSBA. So it wouldn't be a match. So I think you can,
Okay.
they're waiting for the analysis that's being done by the subcommittee.
Okay.
yeah, I would say the facilities probably, Jason.
Okay.
Do we also do we also vote on the town hall windows in theory?
Yes. Mhm. My view is we should vote on anything that's capital in nature, regardless of funding source. So if there is a water project, we should be voting on that. even if it's being funded through the water fund.
Yeah, makes sense. Do we have on here? So on here, on the capital plan, I don't see ambulance, right? Aren't we supposed to
That's
replace?
because it's, so what I'm gonna, so
You gotta have money in the ambulance fund, and there's not.
well, but here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send out FY21 and FY22, right? So that people can see if there's anything in 22 that they think shouldn't wait till 22. But yes, that's why the ambulance is not on there, to answer that specific question. But it's because it was being funded with a appropriation as opposed to appropriation from the ambulance fund as opposed to bonding. So if you put a bond payment in there, does it work? I don't know, right? But that's what I think we need to assess because of how much repairs are going into some of these things.
Yep, no, I think it makes sense.
Okay, so right now, so I just need to know by end of day tomorrow whether anyone wants Tom LaFlame, Chief Paulus, or Karen Galligan at the meeting. I will invite Mr. Parent and Chief Achilles.
I think we just have what?
You're also gonna invite Bill Harrington?
Yes.
Do we for police cruisers? Do they have 2 cruisers or just 1?
Yes, 2.
2. I don't really have for me, I don't think we need Chief Paulus unless more of a conversation of do we change funding sources from leasing to buying, but that's agnostic of whether or not we spend the money.
Yeah, I think that's a Brian and Mark conversation.
Yeah. But
okay. So I think we have a schedule. I will send out invites accordingly. Is there any public comment? I'm seeing none. Other business that may properly come before the committee. Does anyone have anything else?
you want to wait on the recreation question I had till next meeting?
Yeah, because I want to talk about bigger picture, who's going to own certain things, which I think that will fit
Yeah.
nicely in that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Andrew. Roll call. Cook.
Aye.
Just throwing off Lisa's not here. Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. All right, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
You
All right,
too.
bye-bye.